This Easy Gap video series is brought to you by Chico State's Colleges of Natural Sciences and Agriculture and the Center for Healthy Communities, and is partially funded by the CSU Agricultural Research Institute. This video is crop handling. The crops you harvest are important for your business and important for the health and well-being of our community. You put a lot of effort into keeping the food you grow safe, and it's important to document your harvesting practices so that buyers know the food they are purchasing from you is safe. In this video, we'll talk about best practices for harvesting in the field, and we will talk about water use during harvesting. Next, we'll talk about in-field processing. We will also discuss important aspects of food safety when packing and storing produce. There are 6 food safety documents that you will see in this video. You can click on the links on the website to access the documents yourself. At the end of the video, we'll show you how to use them in your on-farm food safety plan. Harvesting, packing, and storing your produce are the final steps taken before the food is passed on to the buyer. You want to ensure the food you are selling is safe for the success of your business and the health of the consumer. Taking care to protect your crops from contamination during harvesting and documenting your practices can help reduce the risk of loss of sales and allows the buyer to know you are making sure the food you are selling is safe. The most important procedure to have in place for your harvesting practices is what needs to be done when produce is dropped on the ground. There should be a documented policy in place stating that any produce that's dropped on the ground, with the exception of crops such as tubers and root crops, should be discarded. All employees that are harvesting and packing produce should be trained on this policy, and you should have training records on file for each of these individuals. Harvesting tools should be constructed of materials that are easy to clean, which means they should be smooth, shard-free, and not flake or oxidize. Harvest tools should not be taken into break areas or toilet facilities. Tools should not be used for anything other than harvesting produce. Employees should be trained on what to do if their harvesting equipment becomes contaminated. They should be provided with storage for their harvesting equipment, such as non-porous scabbards for their knives. Leather should not be used as it is difficult to clean. You should have a documented policy in place stating how and when harvesting equipment should be cleaned. Harvesting equipment checks and sanitation must occur at least twice per shift, before a shift begins and in the middle of a shift. It is important that the correct strength of sanitizer solution is being maintained. This should be checked and recorded on a regular basis, which ideally is hourly while the solution is in use. You should have cleaning and sanitizing records in place so that you can verify that these procedures are being followed. Mechanical or machine harvesting is any product harvesting that uses a mechanical harvesting unit, a field packing unit, a coring rig, or an in-field processing rig. Any food contact surfaces on harvesting machinery need to be made of food-grade materials or stainless steel. Surfaces must be free of flaking paint, corrosion, rust, or other materials. Packing surfaces need to be sanitized easily, which means they must be made of sanitary, food-grade material. Wooden surfaces should not be used if produce will come in contact with it. You should have a documented sanitation program in place for harvesting equipment, which includes an SOP on sanitation processes along with a documentation log. Contamination can occur from materials such as hydraulic fluid from overhead equipment. Harvesting equipment should be designed to minimize the risk of contamination through the use of drip pans or catch basins. Lights should be protected and secured. There should be no evidence of cracks or breaks in these items. Food-grade lubricants should be used on any area where produce exposure could occur. Documentation must be available showing that any lubricants used are food-grade. Produce, packing tables, or belts found underneath overhead equipment should be protected to minimize potential contamination. This section applies to water used in any manner that contacts produce during or after harvest. For example, water that is applied to produce for washing or cooling, used to prevent dehydration before cooling, used to make ice that directly contacts produce, used on food contact surfaces, or used for washing hands during and after harvest activities. This section does not apply to sprouts. For water used in any manner that directly contacts produce during growing activities, along with the procedure for water sampling, refer to the water source and use video. If water is used during harvesting and it contacts the produce, for example during washing or rehydration, microbial tests must be performed, which includes a test for E. coli. The water used during harvesting must meet the national standards for drinking water set by the EPA. Samples should be taken at the point of use. Water sample testing frequency depends on the type of water source. There are no requirements to test water from municipal or public water systems as long as the results or certificates of compliance are kept from the municipality or public water systems. Sampling should be conducted throughout the year, especially throughout the growing season. For surface water, an initial 20 samples need to be collected over 2 to 4 years. After that, 5 samples need to be collected each year. For groundwater, an initial 4 samples need to be collected over 1 year. After that, 1 sample needs to be collected each year. Document procedures on how water samples are collected and how they are identified. Your written procedures should include what to do if unsuitable or abnormal water test results are found. If the water does not meet these criteria, corrective actions are required as soon as possible. There are 2 corrective action options. 1. Re-inspect the water, remove any identifiable hazards, and retest the water. Or 2. Treat the water. Use the guidance in WSU6 SOP and WSU6 log for treating the water. Follow the standard limits unless your buyers or regulators require otherwise. If your buyers or regulators have different testing requirements, follow their guidance. Water should be treated with an antimicrobial. For example, if chlorine is used, the level should be greater than 1 part per million free chlorine. Other common antimicrobials used are ozone and peracetic acid. Surface waters, such as water from rivers, canals, or ponds, is not acceptable for use unless it is first treated by filtration or antimicrobial chemicals, and it must be tested. Antimicrobial levels must be checked and documented regularly. For single-pass systems, the levels must be checked with every batch that is prepared. For recycled systems, the levels should be checked hourly. For continuous injection systems, the levels should be checked hourly at minimum. Antimicrobial standards should be included in your SOP and documentation log, along with your corrective actions. Your corrective actions should include what to do with the product, along with how to correct the levels of antimicrobials. If the product is partially or fully processed in the field, the flow of personnel, utensils, and contact surfaces should be set up to avoid contact between processed and unprocessed products. Employees that come into contact with produce should wear clean protective garments such as hairnets, plastic gloves, and aprons. If on-site storage is used for harvesting equipment and materials, such as packing material, cartons, containers, tables, or disinfectants, the storage areas must be secure, clean, and maintained properly to reduce pests and contamination. Packing materials should be stored off the ground. Storage areas should be kept clean and well ventilated and free from condensation, sewage, dust, dirt, toxic chemicals, and other contaminants. Produce and equipment that is stored, along with any shelving that is used to store it, should be free of dust and dirt and other contaminants. All storage areas should have a pest control program in place. Poisonous baits should not be used inside storage areas due to the risk of contamination. Avoid using baits that contain allergens such as peanut butter. Snap traps should not be used except in emergencies, in which case they must be housed inside of stations. Your written food safety plan should include an SOP for harvest water sampling and a log to document water testing results. Your plan should also include an SOP for harvesting procedures and tool and equipment cleaning and sanitizing to prevent cross-contamination, and a log to document cleaning and sanitizing of tools and equipment. In addition, your plan should include a water disinfection SOP and a log to document water disinfection and any corrective actions needed. All of your harvesting practices information should be available for review and should be kept for 3 years. Proper harvesting practices are critical to maintaining the safety of the food you grow. Being able to show, through documentation, your practices and procedures will allow buyers and consumers to have confidence that the food they are purchasing is safe. Thanks for watching, and make sure to check out the rest of our video series to help you put together your on-farm food safety plan. All food safety policies and procedures should be developed using national, state, and local guidelines. Therefore, no responsibility is assumed or implied by CSU Chico Research Foundation or CSU Chico.